defying the international community. The Kurdish regional government went ahead with a referendum to extend its authority and its territory. The KRG not only held the referendum in areas under its control, but also extended it to disputed areas outside of its jurisdiction. The most controversial of these was the city of Kirkuk. Composed of Kurds, Turkmen, Arabs and the Syrians, fears are high that the city could descend into chaos once the result of the referendum sets in. Many Kurds here want the city to join the KRG, but for many Turkmen, historically, the city is not Kurdish. Some believe the referendum was nothing more than a land grab, with the KRG harboring ulterior motives.
Peşmerge gücü bizim güvenliğimizi sağlamır. Peşmerge gücü önceden Erbil Süleymaniye'nin sınırlarını Kerkük'ten kendi bölgelerini bir de petrol yataklarına nasıl petrolün üzerine kontrol etsinler.
Control over oil is a major factor for both the Iraqi and Kurdish regional government's interests in Kirkuk. The city's Arab residents fear the result could spark ethnic tensions.
موضوع الاستفتاء مرفوض لدى المكون العربي بإقامته في هذه المحافظة. العربي أو التركماني يقبل أن يكون تحت راية العلم العراقي، لأن العلم العراقي أو العراق ما يتبع لأحد، ولكن من يكون هناك دولة تسمى كردستان فهي معلومة لمن انتمائها ومن ينتمي إليها.
Complicating the matter are questions surrounding the referendum's legality.
Bir oldu bittiye tabi tutulması ihtimaline karşı Irak merkezi hükümetiyle koordinasyon halinde bir çalışma içine gireceğiz. Nihayet Irak'ın toprağıdır, hükümranlık hakkı oradadır.
The consequences are already being felt, as Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan said Turkey will seal its border with northern Iraq, and Iran's foreign ministry said they've already closed their borders with the KRG. Turkey and Iraq have also warned that military force may be used if violence erupts in places like Kirkuk, a city that remains on edge as the threat of conflict looms.
Two flags now, Turkey and Iraq, on a mock battlefield that sends out a daily message. It's addressed to Iraqi Kurds. As they celebrated the referendum on the other side of this border, these Iraqi government troops were flown in to join the exercise. This exercise, conveniently perhaps situated right beside the main border crossing road between Turkey and Iraq, really hasn't got a great deal of military significance. It carries yet another political message to the Iraqi Kurds. The reason is that alongside the tank charges, the political attacks coming from Turkey are in line with the Iraqi government's sentiment. The Kurdish leadership is being accused of treason by Turkey's president.
Zaten ortada kalacaksın.
They'll be left in the lurch when we start imposing our sanctions. It'll be over when we close the oil taps. All their revenues will vanish, and they will not be able to find food and clothes when our trucks stop going into northern Iraq.
These are the trucks he mentions. Habor, the only border crossing from Turkey into northern Iraq, is one of the largest in the world for trade. It's worth more than $8.25 billion of business a year to Turkey. If it closes, it will be catastrophic for Iraqi Kurds. It's estimated Turkey supplies nearly 70% of their imported goods. Nihat Bilishik is a businessman dealing in exports. He's a Turkish Kurd and he's anxious. He says the situation could hurt both Kurds and Turks.
Now there is tension and northern Iraq really needs Turkey. In my view, Turkey also needs northern Iraq because of domestic and other regional issues. This bridge of friendship and trade shouldn't be destroyed. On the contrary, it should be reinforced.
Erdogan's other threat is blocking Kurdish oil exports, shutting off a pipeline in which up to 600,000 barrels worth of oil a day flows through Turkey. The threats are being repeated with no action so far apart from simulated combat on the border. If holding back is aimed at pressuring the Iraqi Kurds into some sort of U-turn, it's hard to see that happening. For now, while armies make new alliances, there is uncertainty.
If you say you're Kurdish, there's a good chance you're from Turkey, or Iraq, or Iran, or Syria, or Armenia. Kurds are spread across 5 different countries, speak 3 different dialects, but they still identify themselves as a distinct ethnic group. So how did this group end up in so many places? Well, Kurds were some of the original inhabitants of this region, what used to be ancient northern Mesopotamia. They lived virtually border-free under the Ottomans until World War I. The winners began to carve up the Ottoman Empire, and the Kurds were promised a separate homeland. But when the borders of modern Turkey and its neighbors were drawn, there was no more talk of an independent Kurdistan. Since then, Kurds have been a minority in every country they live in. One of these countries is Iraq.
لماذا قرر الاستفتاء؟ لأنه فشلت كل المحاولات السابقة.
Iraqi Kurds are constitutionally a part of the country, but they function as a semi-autonomous entity. They have their own parliament and their own armed forces, the Peshmerga, who have been at the forefront of the fight against ISIL. In fact, they've proven to be better fighters than the Iraqi army itself. For example, in 2014, the Iraqi army fled an ISIL attack in Mosul, while Peshmerga fighters stood their ground. Iraq's Kurdish region also occupies parts of the country that are bursting with oil and gas. The Kurds sell these resources pretty much independently of Baghdad. So virtually a state within a state, but with aspirations for a truly independent state separate from Iraq. Naturally, the Iraqi government isn't thrilled.
والله من يعلن عن هذا يتحمل مسؤولية إعلانه من السهل أن تعلن ما تريد بس ليس بنفس الدرجة من السهولة أن تطبق ما تريد.
Nor are the other countries with a Kurdish minority.
Yaptığı açıklama bana göre hakikaten çok yanlış bir açıklama. Çünkü bizim yıllardır Irak'ın toprak bütünlüğü konusundaki hassasiyetimizi biliyor.
Even the US, which has so far armed Peshmerga fighters, doesn't want an independent Kurdistan. The fear is a domino effect. A free Kurdistan in Iraq means calls for Kurdish independence in Turkey, Syria, Iran, and Armenia. That could possibly mean redrawing borders, loss of territory, and of course oil revenue, among many other complications. None of these countries want that. They're also afraid that if they give independence to one ethnic minority, demands from others could be next. Meanwhile, the Kurds ask, how is that our problem?
3.3 million Kurds defied their northern and southern neighbors yesterday, voting to secede from Iraq to form an independent Kurdish country, while Turkey and Iraq responded harshly, threatening economic and military action if the movement to form a Kurdish state continues. And for more on this independent movement, we turn now to the Director of Outreach for the Kurdish Policy Research Center, Barak Aden. Thank you so much for joining us. And so we understand that the results came in just at 5 p.m. So what's the latest?
So far the results are 91.83% for the independence of Kurdistan Regional Government of Iraq.
So overwhelmingly, people are supporting to get out there and be independent. And so we understand that the president of Turkey, Erdogan, he came out and said that this whole independence for Iraqi Kurdistan could spark an ethnic war in the region. And he even proposed military options on the table. So what are your thoughts?
Right. Well, his example was actually the city of Cizre. It's a Kurdish city in Turkey, and it's gone through a very big destruction. And he used this as an example of what awaits the Kurdistan regional government right now. Of course, I see this as an empty threat. considering the fact that they are one of the biggest partners, the trading partners of the Kurdistan regional government. I don't think Erdogan is going to jeopardize this relationship. And of course, the Kurdistan regional government also is the second largest trading partner of Turkey, nearly $10 billion, including mostly oil. So I don't think Erdogan is going to jeopardize this relationship. He's just trying to kind of, let's say, scare the Kurdish population within his own borders, Turkish borders.
Interesting. You bring up the oil, and we know that there's hundreds of Turkish companies that operate in Kurdistan, and the proposed Kurdish state includes the disputed oil-rich city of Kirkuk. So is that a focal point of conversation?
Absolutely. I mean, one of his threats was that he was going to shut down the pipelines, those oil pipelines from the Kurdistan regional government, and starve them to death. That's what Erdogan was threatening with, but I really don't think that this is a legitimate threat. This is actually concluding his point of view. It's not the matter of fighting against the PKK. It's a Kurdish freedom movement in Turkey. So his main target is not the PKK here. His main target is the Kurdish nation in general. So he's actually mentioned in, I believe, 2006 or 2007, even in South Africa, he would not let the Kurds form a Kurdish nation, a Kurdish state.
Interesting. And what about the United Nations? I mean, they were reiterating their concerns as well that this would possibly destabilize the region. What are their concerns?
Well, Kurds are the most reliable allies of the West, especially against the fight in the fight against ISIS. So I find that really not very legitimate, because as I said, Kurds have stabilized the region, not only in Iraq, but also in Syria, in the fight against ISIS, in the fight against terrorism in general, and al-Nusra, al-Qaeda in Syria again. So supporting the Kurds will only stabilize the region, not destabilize the region. Think about it. So they're concerned, the US also, State Department also mentioned that the main focus is to fight against ISIS. Well, Kurds have been fighting against ISIS for 4 years now. So this has never, ever affected this fight. In fact, because of the fact that they were part of Iraq, they were not able to receive any heavy equipments, any heavy weapons from the coalition forces, directly from the coalition forces. It had to go through Baghdad because they were not an independent state. So this will fasten the process. This will smoothen the fight against ISIS.
And so, if this vote is recognized, what does this mean for the Kurds? How will this change their lives?
That's a very good question. I would like to start off by saying that Kurds have been hungry for an independent state for the last 100 years at least, ever since the World War I. And they were divided into 4 different countries. And of course, Kurds have been very peaceful. They have not really been a significant threat to their neighboring countries. In fact, they supported their internal problems, to solve the internal problems. So this will only make their lives easier, and economically, culturally, because they're facing assimilation, and this will definitely put an end to assimilation, another genocide, and they will live in much more peace and prosperity.
Wow. And is there anything that your organization is doing during this time to show support?
Well, I think it's also important to note that the representative of Arizona, Trent Franks, just proposed a bill 534 last night after a referendum to the Congress to support the rights of the Kurds for independence. So as the KPRC, we definitely support this decision, this bill, this resolution of Representative Trent Franks. And again, we're involved to fasten this process of independence, the negotiations with Baghdad, with Turkey, and the neighboring countries.
Interesting. We'll have to see how it all plays out. Thank you so much for your time. That's Barak Aden, Director of Outreach for the Kurdish Policy Research Center. Thank you.